So the very last thing that we need to talk about when doing operations with rational numbers would be the multiplying and dividing of positive and negative fractions. So the first thing we have is all of our rules, which you can pause the video here and get these into your notebook. You want to find the absolute values of those fractions first, and then you need to multiply or divide as usual. Now, if this is something that you would like some help with, Mrs. De Silva can teach you how to do the Math Macarena. I've got the words right here, and you'll have to learn the movements from Mrs. De Silva at another time. But it goes like this. First we will divide. Keep the first, flip the second, now we multiply. And just so that we understand, if you have a multiplication problem, you need to start just right there. You don't need to do the division part. And then it goes, keep the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. Lastly, we reduce. And the reducing might not happen if you cross cancel to begin with, but that's, really up to you. And of course, when we talk about this division, we really have already changed anything that's a mixed number. And then, just like our rules from before, we count the number of negative signs. If there's an odd number, the answer is negative. If there's an even number, the answer is positive. So let's do some examples here. Got 1/2 divided by -3/5. So I sing my Math Macarena. First we will divide. That's why I have the division problems first. Keep the first. So that means we've got 1/2. Flip the second. Remember, these are the absolute values of these numbers. So I'm going to, for right now, ignore the negative. So I'm going to flip the second. That becomes 5/3. Now we multiply. So this becomes a multiplication problem. Keep the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. So 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 3 is 6. Lastly, we reduce. We don't need to reduce this, but we do need to go back and see how many negative signs there were to begin with. There's only one, so that means my final answer is negative. -5/6 is the answer. Our next example is a division problem. However, we've got a mixed number there that we need to address first. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. So we've got -5/3 divided by -5/8. And now we get to do the Math Macarena. Keep the first. And I want to remind you at this point we are dealing with the absolute values. Keep the first. Flip the second. Now we multiply. Keep the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. Make sure you know that was, I made it kind of look like a minus sign, but it was a multiplication sign. 5 times 8 is 40. 3 times 5 is 15. You might have noticed that you could have canceled those 5s, and we would have just had 8/3, which is what we would have had if we reduced that 8/15. And of course that 3 is still much too little to be carrying around that big giant 8. So I would change the 8/3. I say how many times does 3 go into 8? It goes into it 2 times, with 2 left over, so it's 2 2/3. I go back and I count. I've got 1, 2 negatives. It is positive 2 2/3. My next one. Now remember, when we started the Math Macarena, it begins with division, but we're right here. Now we multiply. So we can go right to knowing that these are absolute values. Keep the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. 8 times 9. Now, I would prefer, and it is certainly easier to do our reducing here. We know that 4 goes into 8 and 4, so 8 becomes 2, 4 becomes 1. However, if we hadn't reduced, we would have known that 7 times 4 is 28. 8 times 9 is 72. And that reduces to that 7 times 1, which is 7 over 2 times 9, 18ths. So either way, it gets you to the correct answer. Count the number of negative signs. There are 2. That's an even number, so this is a positive 7/18. Our last one down here, we've got mixed numbers. We need to take care of that. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So I've got 9/4 times, and that's -9. No, it's not, it's positive, sorry. This next one is times -9/10. I keep the top with the top, and that again is my absolute values here. So I've got 9 times 9 over, with the bottom, 4 times 10. And I look here and there really is no reducing that can happen, so I just go with it. 9 times 9 is 81. 4 times 10 is 40. That 40 is much too small to be carrying that big giant 81 around. 40 goes into 81 2 times with 1 left over. I count my number of negative signs. There's only one. That's an odd number, so therefore my final answer is -2 and 1/40.